So President Trump has made his second selection for the U.S. Supreme Court in just 18 months since he assumed his seat in the Oval Office. Brett Kavanaugh of the D.C. Circuit of the U.S. Court of Appeals, and joining us to analyze the president's selection to the High Court and what it portends in the generation ahead is LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor Scott Cosenza, who made an interesting prediction hours before the president's announcement. Scott, you predicted that Trump would pick someone who clerked for the retiring Anthony Kennedy. That was the inducement, you said, to Kennedy to get him to retire. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Now, I heard others predict that Kavanaugh would be selected, but none of them had said that he'd be picked because he clerked for Kennedy.
Yeah, Tim, it seemed to me that if you're trying to encourage somebody to step down from a position like that a sweet encouragement, not a transactional encouragement, by the way. I'm not suggesting this was a, hey, if you do X, if I do Y, would you do X? But more like...
But he could do that if he wanted to.
Certainly, yeah. I don't know that there's any legal prohibition for him for doing so. It would not be a legally enforceable promise, by the way. So, it's not... So that's where the prohibition would lie. You can't actually... Kennedy couldn't sue if he then appointed like a Thomas clerk, right, to the position. But the point was... I thought that, that Justice Kennedy, eyeing the end of his career, would certainly feel more positive about issuing his retirement if he knew that his legacy might carry on in the form of his clerk. Kennedy, first of all, Supreme Court clerks are generally close-knit groups with their justice. Kennedy, that's particularly true with Kennedy's clerks, we're told. I have no reason not to, to doubt that. And so that just seemed like a thing that Trump might do. We know that he has a previous relationship dealing with Kennedy's son, who was a banker in New York years ago, and thinks fondly of that person. And sort of
collusion.
Right. So anyway, that seemed like a natural fit to me. But in any case, even if there was no relationship, based on the pick of Gorsuch and what we know about the leadership of the Federalist Society in helping Donald Trump come up with the universe of people that he then draws from to select for these senior positions in the judiciary, Kavanaugh is it makes sense in that regard as well.
Now, the retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy has been, for the most part, a strict constructionist, but not when it comes to social issues. He saved Roe versus Wade in the 1990s. He wrote the opinion in the Obergefell case that established the new universal right to gay marriage. So is it, Scott, in social issues, foremost among them abortion, where Brett Kavanaugh will make the greatest difference in the court?
Well, Tim, let's be clear that Justice Kennedy didn't establish a new right to gay marriage in the Obergefell decision. He simply recognized
he discovered
the existing right that has been existing ever since the founding that we just didn't realize. So that's what happened there, and that's why I say it that way, because, of course, I'm mocking that decision. I think it was ridiculous, but it is important to delineate how these things are kind of grown from the Constitution, right? That's what he did. He sort of read it and decided that he was going to plant some seeds in water, and lo and behold, this right existed. So will Kavanaugh be more impactful in the social area is the question. I think that we're going to have to wait and see a few years down the line where his jurisprudence takes him and how impactful he is. We won't know exactly where those 5-4 splits occur. The court watchers that use the sort of Moneyball econometrics, kind of like they plug in these decisions and plot them on graphs. I don't do that, but they there are people who do it. They suggest that Roberts will now be the pivot point and the swing vote on the court, and that Kavanaugh will join the right bloc, and that Roberts is now your pivot point.
So from O'Connor, who was the swing vote, to Kennedy as a swing vote, to now Roberts as a swing vote, which he certainly was in the Obamacare decision, as he single-handedly, the Chief Justice did, salvage the Obamacare
there were
law.
5 votes in favor. So when you say single-handedly, it's...
Well, come on. I mean, we know that the leftist justices were going to vote as a bloc, and we thought we knew that the 4 on the right would vote in a bloc. We just didn't think that Kennedy would be one of them and Roberts wouldn't. But let's talk about the choice of Brett Kavanaugh. Is this the safe choice, a consensus choice, a not terribly bold choice, as some conservatives have said, perhaps one designed to attract liberal Republican and moderate Democrat senators? What does he bring to the table that the other supposed semifinalist, Amy Coney Barrett, doesn't, or vice versa?
Let's say first for his qualifications, he is a judge who has sat for over 10 years on the court immediately, regarded as immediately below the United States Supreme Court. The District of Columbia Court of Appeals is the most highly regarded court in the country that is not the Supreme Court. And judges who are selected to sit on that court and are confirmed to sit on that court, as he has been, are amongst the best and the brightest. In fact, you put them on that court precisely because you might want to groom them to be a Supreme Court justice. So one of the reasons why he was picked, I think, is because of that pedigree. He's a double Yale law grad. He's a professor of law, I think, at half a dozen of these law schools. He's regarded as a bright, shining mind in the legal community. And you couple that, Tim, with his position on the court, his previous confirmation before the Senate to that court that sits just below the Supreme Court, and I think is designed for a very quick confirmation hearing. You talked about, moderate in a way that Republicans can support him. We're talking about Susan Collins of Maine, right? We're talking about a few others that on the political calculation side, they worry about going off the reservation because of the pro-life aspect or pro-choice aspect that may be able to peel them off. 100% for the political calculation, Tim, this seems like a home run pick for a quick nomination, which they want, obviously, to get through before the midterm elections come in November. So I predict that that's what we will have, that this will be a painless...
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, painless in the sense of, sure, they'll have Sheldon Whitehouse screaming about whatever, him removing women's rights away,
and Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and all the other hopefuls for president in 2020.
But that's just fodder for their own fundraising campaigns. I mean, there won't actually be a situation where they're going to have to worry about Republican votes precisely because of the choice that he made.
Okay. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Tim.